So recently Google has been testing out some more anti-user features. This time it's the removal of URLs from search results. And you might be wondering why I'm saying more. And that's because this is a common trend with Google with their search engine and their browser. So today we're going to be looking at some of the things that they've been doing over the past year or so. So if you're new to the channel, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below because it'll really help the channel out. We're trying to smash 100 subscribers by the end of the year and we are getting very, very close to actually doing that. So now that's out of the way, let's get started. Good afternoon everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So the first thing that we've got here is actually from Reddit. I don't use Reddit much, but I found this from Hacker News, and it is actually really terrible if they do roll this out. So the way that Google does their testing is they'll typically roll it out to maybe like 1% or a fraction of a percent of users, and a lot of the times these just go unnoticed because they're just little things that they're testing out. But this one was from a power user who thinks this is, I guess, something really terrible, and I completely agree with them. So basically what happened is, for this person, they had their search results, but they were missing the URLs. So if you're not a very tech-savvy user, you might be wondering why that's actually a serious problem. So the reason that missing URLs is a terrible idea is pretty much summed up perfectly by this first comment here. So for SEO, so that's search engine optimization, this is actually pretty awesome. If I can make it to the front page and I can title my page as Facebook login or sign up, so just basically pretending to be the Facebook login and sign up page, nobody will be able to tell the difference. And that means there's lots and lots of clicks for that website. So if you're just trolling the search engine, that's one thing, but this makes it very easy to set up a phishing site, and if that phishing site happens to get to the front page, even if it's not above the first Facebook login, even if it's just on that first page, there's going to be people who click it because they can't tell the difference, especially if you set the favicon to the same as Facebook, which Google has also been testing, actually adding the favicon to search results as well. That I don't have a problem with, that's fine, that's just an aesthetic change. But removing URLs is a serious anti-user move. It's going to make it so much easier for phishing sites to be able to pretend to just be a regular site. So this is actually a common trend for Google. They've actually been doing this for a while, where they want to pretty much hide the existence of a URL. So before we go on to that, there's actually one other thing I wanted to mention. So we've got this other comment here. So no user gains anything by it. That's perfectly true. This actually helps phishing sites. And it also helps with Google AMP's effort, which can now pretend to be the original site even more effectively. So I don't have much knowledge of Google AMP myself, but I know there's a lot of people who are against it. And I think that has to do with the fact that there are a lot of people who hate the idea of Google taking over more and more of the web market share, and I can definitely get behind that. I don't know if Google AMP is actually a good way to develop mobile-friendly web applications, but even if it is, Google already has a serious market share control problem with the current web, and I don't want to see that get any worse, that's for sure. So this next article I wanted to bring up was, the article title may seem ridiculous, Google wants to kill the URL, but when I show you some stuff a bit later, you'll see what I mean. This one is from 2018, the 9th of April? September the 4th? I don't know which order that date's supposed to be in. Anyway, doesn't matter. So this is by Lily Hay Newman on Wired. So this doesn't really matter on here. So uniform resource locators are the familiar web addresses you use every day. They're listed in the web's DNS book and direct browsers to the right Internet Protocol addresses. So you understand what a web address is, a URL is basically. So we'll skip down to a bit further. So this is from a security engineer on the Chrome team. So people have a really hard time understanding URLs, says Adrian Porterfeld. They are hard to read and it's hard to know which part of them is supposed to be trusted. And in general, I don't think URLs are working as a good way to convey site identity. So we want to move toward a place where web identity is understandable by everyone. They know who they're talking to when they're using a website, and they can reason about whether they can trust them, but this will mean big changes in how and when Chrome displays URLs. We want to challenge how URLs should be displayed and question it as we're figuring out the right way to convey identity. So I don't know what this will look like because it's an active discussion in the team right now, says Parissa Tabriz, Director of Engineering at Chrome, but I do know that whatever we propose is going to be controversial. That's one of the challenges with a really old and open sprawling platform. Change will be controversial, whatever form it takes, but it's important to do something because everyone is unsatisfied by URLs. They kind of suck. I don't know where they're getting this information from. that doesn't seem to be the idea of anyone that I've ever heard using the internet. URLs are a perfectly fine way of understanding what a website purpose is and whether that website should be trusted. So back in 2014, Chrome tried out something they called the origin chip that only showed the main domain name of sites to help ensure that users knew which domain they were actually browsing on. If you wanted to see the full URL, you could click the chip and the rest of the URL bar was just Google's search box. The experiment garnered praise from some for making web identity more straightforward, but it also generated criticism. Within a few weeks of showing up in the Chrome pre-release, Google paused the origin chip rollout. So I don't know if this feature is actually within Chrome at this point because I don't actually use it, but they've been working on the removal of URLs for years now. So I was going to go with another article, but this one actually works better. So within Chrome 69, they ended up removing the www subdomain. So that is the part just before most URLs. And the reason that this is a problem, so whilst there are a lot of websites that will redirect you from, so say with google.com and www.google.com, they will redirect you to the same page. This is not necessarily the case with every website. There are a lot of pages that do not even bother handling the www part. So the removal of that is going to make it actually much harder to know what the website is actually supposed to be loading. The attack on users doesn't stop there. So last year we had the removal of the view image button from the Google search results, which was better for websites and photographers. I don't know how it's better for websites, but way worse for users. And that was one of the big reasons that I decided to switch over to DuckDuckGo, because it's just a massive pain to actually download an image you see on the internet. I don't want to have to actually dig around to just see an image and download it. If the image is hosted on the internet and I can go to the website and download it, why can I not download it from your search engine? It's just a massive pain and it's not really helping anyone. So we've got another feature that Chrome tried to push in Chrome 69, which was when you deleted all cookies, it didn't actually delete all cookies. It would keep your Google accounts logged in. So whilst this doesn't have to do with the removal of URLs, this is another one of just Google's ways of trying to make their browser easier to use. So if I want to delete all of my cookies, it's because I want to delete all of my cookies. I don't want to keep my Google accounts logged in. I want everything to be dealt with because that's what that button is supposed to do. And hiding that away from users doesn't help anyone. All it does is make it harder for users to actually understand what their browser is doing. And I get that they want to, I guess, make it easier for new users, but as with the URL issue, for the past, how long has commercial internet been around now? Almost 30 years, since the early 90s. People have not been struggling with the concept of URLs. Sure, there have been some people who've struggled with it, but the vast majority of people on the internet have gained an understanding of how this works, and they use it to understand if they're on a phishing site. If they're trying to go to, say, PayPal, for example, and the URL says something like PayPay. Actually, no, that's a bad example because I think PayPay actually redirects you to PayPal. But let's say you have PayPal, but there's an E in it or something like that. If you don't have the URL there, then it's going to be so much harder to actually see that. Before I run off on that tangent for a long time, I'll just show you the last thing I wanted to bring up that is just another thing where Google is trying to abuse their power. And that was basically with, I'm not sure which version of this was. It might have been Chrome 69 as well. Let's see. It doesn't have the version number in here. I think this is still an issue that's currently being discussed. So with this issue, basically what's happening is that Chrome is not respecting the autocomplete off tag or autocomplete off thing that you can put onto a input tag. So basically what's happening is that Google is basically ignoring the W3C spec, which is the standard web spec, and basically using their market share to try to decide exactly how the web should be structured, rather than just following the standard spec that every other browser is using, with the exception of things that existed in the past, like IE6, for example, which is basically what Chrome is trying to become. But the problem with IE6 is that it just lost all of its market share. Chrome, however, has this massive web market share, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. So they can throw around their weight to just say, this is how the spec is going to be. We don't care that the W3C spec says something different. We want it done this way. So what's been happening with this is, because they're not respecting the W3C spec, it has been showing up autocompletes for things that shouldn't be having autocompletes. So say, the example I saw before was someone had a tip option on a website they were buying food from, and for some reason it decided to autocomplete off screen to $1,000. And this person ended up tipping $1,000 when they had meant to tip, I think, 10 or something like that. And that's because of the way that Chrome was handling the autocomplete. So that should have had autocomplete off, but what ended up happening was it, instead of turning it off, it just put it off screen for some reason. And there's also a lot of UI libraries for the web that will play around with this tag, and if you don't have it set to off, what's going to happen is you're going to have their autocomplete plus the autocomplete that Google is trying to just push in there because they don't want to respect this tag, and you're going to end up breaking these components. So this isn't even the full extent of what Google has been doing with their browser and their search engine that's just been very anti-user. This is just what I found within a 5-minute search. And if you do want to move away from Google, there is something that I would recommend you switching to. And I know this is going to sound like a paid ad, and I would happily take that. So just, you know what? Move away from Google and go instead to DuckDuckGo. It's based on Bing, but most of the time, the search results are fine. They're obviously not going to be as good as Google because this search engine doesn't track you. But do you want this massive company to basically have complete control over the search of the internet and complete control over the web standards used by the growing smaller and smaller other browsers? I certainly don't, that's for sure. So I use DuckDuckGo and I use Firefox because Firefox is really the only real competitor to Chrome. I guess if you're on a Mac, then use Safari or something. I don't like Safari myself. I would just recommend switching to Firefox. But using something that's not Chrome and using something that's not Google is the only way to get a corporation like Google to actually pay attention to what people are saying. They're not going to do anything if you just keep using their services, because the way they make money from those is from people using them. So if you can complain on them while using them, yes, I know it's slightly hypocritical to be using YouTube, but with YouTube, I make an exception because there is just literally no other platform to use. I would happily use something else, but BitChute, it just doesn't have the viewer base, and everything else that comes up just fails. But at least with your browser and your search engine, there are legitimate alternatives that do exist. And I think that most people would be able to get all of their work done just using them. Definitely with Firefox they would be able to. DuckDuckGo, it just takes a little bit of learning to actually work out how the random differences between it and Google actually function. So I wasn't actually planning to turn that into a rant, but I guess it happens. It's fine. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you like this video, remember to smash that like button and leave me a comment down below letting me know what you think. If you want to see more videos like this where I just rant about something that I just absolutely hate that's happening right now, let me know and I'm happy to do them because they're actually quite fun. So if you want to see those videos when they come out, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below because it'll really help the channel out. And to make sure they actually get updates, because YouTube cannot actually be trusted to push them to anyone, also go follow my Twitter and my Mastodon and you'll almost certainly get updates there unless they decide that they don't feel like pushing those to anyone either. But I feel like that's kind of their entire business model, so we should be fine there. So up on that corner, I'll put a random playlist that I feel like showing you guys, and if you find anything else that you enjoy in there, then happily check that out. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.